crafty friends, this is the Papered Chef here. In today's Brother Scan and Cut Tips and Tricks tutorial, you are going to learn how to align your Scan and Cut. The reason you want to do this is if you go to cut out a stamped image like I did here, and there's not an even amount of white space around the entire stamped image, then it's time to do an alignment. The alignment is called the Scanning Cutting Position Adjustment. And I'm going to do it to this bear, which I just cut out. I cut out 6 of the bears, or 5 or 6 of the bears, and it wasn't aligned. Yeah, here, I cut out 5 bears. So I figured, why not just record me doing this, because this is what I need to do anyway. Now I'm going to be using the SDX 125. This setting is in all of the Scan and Cut machines, all the different models. And so let's just start out by, I'm going to take the Memento black ink and stamp a couple of these so we can test it when we're done. That way it'll dry a little bit, because after you stamp something, you want to give it a minute to dry before you scan it. Then I'll get into the adjustment, show you how that's done. And just so you know, with the SDX, you can't manually adjust it like you can with the CM models, which I really do like the CM models because of that. But there aren't a whole lot of CM models left, and I know a lot of you are getting Scan and Cuts from Santa Claus. So you probably have the SDX model, so this is more like how we're going to align it. And it's okay if it doesn't align the first time. You just do it a few times, that's all. But I'm going to stamp a couple images just so we have them to test if they're aligned. I love this bear. I'll be showing more about what to do with this bear very soon, probably in my next tutorial when I show you how to make what's called a stamping mask. It stamps really well, and it's from this month's Paper Pumpkin kit. Let me see if I have the instructions. Yeah, just real quick, that bear is from this kit. It's by Stampin' Up! Berry Comforting Paper Pumpkin Kit. It's a bear stamp from that kit. And I just used whatever block this is. Let's see what block this is. Block I. I used a long block. I probably would have fit on a smaller block. Who knows? Okay, so I got a couple stamped. They're fully enclosed, great black lines. But here, let's put these on the table so you can see. After I cut them out, just to me, you might not even see it's not even a big deal. Actually, these are still usable. I'm going to definitely use these. But to me, there's just not an even amount of white space around them for my liking. I like it to be a perfect amount of even white space around it when I stamp an image and cut it out with the Scan and Cut. So that's for me. So I'm taking out a piece of Whisper White 12 by 12 cardstock. You don't have to use Stampin' Up! Whisper White. You just need a piece of white 12 by 12 cardstock. You can get it at a craft store. Sometimes I use what I call my sacrificial papers, not my really good papers. But in this case, I'm using Whisper White because this is what I happen to have. I really stocked up on it because Stampin' Up! Is retiring the Whisper White color because something happened at the paper mill and we can't get the exact formula anymore. But they're coming out with what's called Basic White. So I went and crazy and stocked up on like a few packs of this, and I'm going to try to get more before we run out. But see, Whisper White is retiring, but we're getting a Basic White. I'm sure it'll be good quality, but to me, I really need to stock up on it because this paper works so good with the Scan and Cut. And I just don't want to I don't want to change a lot of things at once, right? All right, so what I'm going to do is you can't load the mat ahead of time when you're going to try this Scanning Cutting Position Adjustment, because all it does is spit out your mat. So you have to load it when it tells you to load it. So I'm just putting it there for a second, and I'll load it when it tells me to load it. Just that's what I'm doing. You saw me put the Whisper White. It has to be 12 by 12. It doesn't have to be 12 inches long. I should have clarified. It only needs to be 12 inches across and maybe like this far down, like maybe 4 inches down, because that's where it puts the little crosses, the little crosshairs. I mean, crosshairs that it has to scan in, and so they kind of are near the top. So you need to, so the piece of white paper has to be near the top. All right, so here is the tip. Now I'm in the SDX 125. You can find this on any of your models, but the SDX 125 does it automatically for you, whereas other models you get to actually position the adjustment in a different way. So, but let's just talk about this model for now. And this will work with any of your SDX models, what I'm showing you. So you turn on your machine. You saw me just turn it on. I'm going to go to Home, and it says the carriage will move to the initial position. All right, it says update available. Go ahead and update your machine. I'm not going to do that right now. Okay, but that's another thing. Let's not digress. We're going to go to the settings. Okay, we're going to click on the settings. And we're going to go down one page. You have these little page separated. They're not really, there's not page numbers like there are on the other models, but see how I'm going into the next section? And I'm down, so I'm down here, let's see. So I'm about 2/3 of the way down. You can see this blue line, and there is the setting called Scanning, Cutting, Position Adjustment. So click on that. Where'd it go? It was right there. There it is. Scanning, Cutting, Position Adjustment. Okay, it's going to say the carriage and mat will move to the initial position. Keep your hands away from the carriage, right? So every time I've tried this with my mat already loaded, it spit it out. So now then you have to load it again. It says install the blade holder and mat with a sheet of white paper attached. Okay, so I did that. You saw my white paper. So I'm going to load the mat. I'm going to use this button, and you know, hopefully it loads. I just sometimes have to use 2 hands to get that to load, but if the stars are aligned, my mat loaded. Okay, good. Now we're going to click start, and I'll show you in a minute what they meant by the position 1 without moving everything around. Okay, we're going to click start, and you probably should have I should turn off my overhead lights. If you have any trouble with your alignment, then turn off your overhead lights. Not my ceiling light, but I have an extra light over here, an extra video light. I probably should have turned that off, but we're going to see how it works. We're going to see how my bears scan in. And then that'll be another troubleshooting tip. I'm all about troubleshooting tips. So if I have any trouble, I'll just turn off my video lights. It's okay to have one light in your ceiling that you're always going to have on. But what I mean is, if you're going to have a separate light that's not always on, if you have trouble scanning and positioning things, it could be that your light is shining in the machine through the side. But in this case, my video light's like way over here. So can you see it's like way over here coming up from this direction. So I don't think that should affect it, because it would affect it if it was coming in from this direction. Like, you don't want light shining into your machine from the side. All right, so what it just did is it just did an alignment. It just did an alignment. It's saying like it put crosshairs and then it scanned it in, and now it's asking me if it's okay, and it is okay. Does the red center of the circle align with the center of the cut? And I say yes. And if you say no, all that means, I'm gonna have to say yes, because if you say no, it doesn't do anything except scan it again and do it again, and you can keep doing this. Sometimes I have to do it 3 or 4 times to get it to align. This one seems like it did. I'm just gonna go ahead and say yes and see what happens. Then we're gonna scan our bears in and see. So it says the setting was saved. Again, if you say no, you actually have to do the whole thing again. Okay. Now, one little trick, I have a lot of troubleshooting tips and tricks. Is this is one of my tips. I'm going to pull this off, and by the way, this is the crosshairs it made that it scanned in. Okay. And I'm going to load my bears onto this page here, because I'll just load here. I'm going to load the bears, because if not, say I take my mat out. I'm going to go ahead and put these on the mat, and then I take it out and I scan in my bears. Well, what happens is sometimes the mat goes in a little crooked and it doesn't go in the exact same way it was just in there. And then sometimes that affects, I'm just using a little bit of painter's tape because I'm losing stickiness. And that sometimes affects my scanning, cutting, position adjustment. And these are just all little things I've learned along the way, and you shouldn't have to worry about it, because technically it should scan these registration marks each time. But hey, I'm just telling you what happens with me. It doesn't, if I take the mat out and then I try it again, sometimes it doesn't align. Okay, we're going for just a better result than this. That's what we're going for. Now let me show you while I got my camera at this angle. So let's see. See that was the lever it told you about, putting it to lever 1 before you did the adjustment. That was lever 1 and 2. Lever 2 you use when you're drawing. It often makes you move the scanner plate out of the way when you're drawing. If you have thick materials, it tells you to put it up to lever 2. All right, so now we have done this. Okay, if it doesn't work, we're going to do it again, but I'm not going to make you all wait for me to do it again. I mean, the next video I do, I can tell you how many times it took me if that's the case, but we now know how to do it. So you understand how to align your machine, scanning, cutting, position adjustment. If you have a CM model, it's awesome because you can actually literally adjust the crosshairs. I hope that Brother will come up with that feature again in future models where we can actually adjust it with the little arrows. I think that was fantastic. I really love my CM machine because of many reasons, but that is one of them. But unfortunately, my CM350 is retired and you have to get another model. Anyway, what I'm doing is going back and just hitting OK. And I'm going to do a scan because I'm going to test my machine. So we're going to go scan. And because we are directly cutting out these stamped images, I'm going to go direct cut. I'm going to temporarily store the data on my machine. So here's my machine. The other option was, do you want to store the data temporarily to Canvas Workspace? And you know, I am connected wirelessly. I could do that, but I just always temporarily store the data on the machine. I'm going to use a 12 by 6 recognition area because my 2 bears are at the top of the page. So I can use 12 by 6. It goes faster. Recognition mode is black and white because I have good contrast between the foreground and the background. So the recognition mode is always select black and white. Well, 99% of the time you need black and white recognition mode because there's nice lines around the images. Okay, let's see how the bears cut out. We're going to click OK. And there are the bears, and they scanned in really nicely. So what I'm going to do is I want to get rid of these small bits in the background, my dirty mat, right? You can do it a couple ways. I can go ahead and I can just get rid of them by making a selection around the bears only, right? With my little stylus, I can do that. That's how I can get rid of those extra bits that we'll try to cut out in the background. I can also ignore object size to get rid of those small bits. I could have ignored anything up to about 2 inches because these bears are huge. And that would have ignored the small objects in the background. And I can also, after I click OK, I can edit those out as well. I can edit out the bits by going into edit and trashing any stray bits. But let's just go with our bears. Let's test this project or process. We're going to click on this, which is the outline distance. We're going to click on 0.4 because I like to put an outline distance around my stamped images. It's just more forgiving because it never really cuts along the line. Maybe yours does. And that's great, but mine never cuts exactly along the black line, so it's always like a little more forgiving for me to add the 0.04 inch outline distance around them, and that's just my personal preference every time I cut a stamped image, for the most part. I mean, unless I'm doing a masking or something, okay? And then I click on, after I say okay, I click on cut. I had to say okay probably a couple times. I click on cut, I click on start, and what I'm doing is just making sure, well, it's just a habit of mine. I kind of rub my mat like this so nothing moves, but you saw I use painter's tape as well. I'm just so used to things slipping on my mat that I, you know, sometimes rub my hand on the paper, sometimes cast a magic spell. Okay, and it's looking so far so good, but it's, you know, it's not quite, it's a little better than this, but not quite as good as I want it. So, but I'm going to go ahead and show you what it did, because you're going to say, what, Paper Chef, that's perfect. And maybe, but I think I want to try it one more time. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to unload the mat, because the next time I do scanning, cutting, position adjustment, I'm going to have to load the mat again anyway. So let's click OK and show you what we have so far, and we'll compare that to the one I had. And I'm pretty happy with the results. I'm always happy with, you know, I'm always happy with the ScanNCut. Like, there's no way I would throw these bears away. The bears are adorable. I mean, they're still great to use. It's just that I just don't think they're perfect yet. And I know the machine is capable of perfectly aligning something. So I'm going to try this again, maybe with my extra lights off. But the point is, you know how to do it. And I keep things real on my channel. And, like, you know, you might have to do it several times. See? It's pretty good, right? I mean, I would say it's better than the first. Maybe it's better. Okay, let's take your little spatula, remove the stamped images. I don't know, because now that side is cut off. See, now this side is not perfectly aligned. I don't know if it's better. I mean, the feet are better, but then this side is not aligned. There's not an even amount of white space around it. Okay, so here was the original. Let's get something to put. Let's use a piece of, here. We're going to use a piece of navy, Night of Navy. Okay, that was my original, and the feet, you see how the feet didn't have the right amount of white space around them. Now this is my new ones. So I guess my new ones are better. And this one's definitely better. This one has like almost perfect even white space all around it. So I would say yes, it's getting better. This was my original. These are 2 originals. This one, yeah, it's pretty good. Okay, so I would say it's getting better. I could go for one more time of alignment. So what you do, and I'm just gonna kind of put the, I'm going to put the paper, so you take this side, because this side already has hash marks, so don't use that again. But of course, use your Whisper White for other things like stamping and stuff. I'm going to go like this. I'm going to put this here. And I'm turning the Whisper White over. I'm going to do an alignment a couple more times, turning off any overhead lights and stuff. But let's just do a couple more things before I end. I'll get that going. I'll get that started, and I'm going to just do a couple things, because this was supposed to be a really quick tips and tricks tutorial. So let's do a couple things. Let's go back, because I noticed, because my machine had been on so long, there had been an update, but I didn't turn off and on my machine. I kept it on. So it wasn't until I turned on my machine again that I saw that update. So let's just get you started on that. And so just so you know what I'm going to do though. So as I end, I'm going to do the update as I end. But what I'm about to do is to get my machine to align again. I'm going to go back into here, right? I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go down, right, to the scanning, cutting, position adjustment. And I'm going to keep doing it again and again until I get it right. And in the next tutorial, when I talk about stamping mask and how I made a mask for this cute little guy from the paper pumpkin kit, then I will actually go through how many times it took me to get it to be perfect. Okay, so I will get it to be perfect. Trust me, I'm not going to give up until this little outline distance is perfect. And I'll let you know how many more times it took me to align it. All right, so before I end, let's click on this. Whenever you turn on your machine after it's been off after you turn it off and completely back on, you're going to see whenever there's an update, you're going to see this information, and you click on the information, and it's going to say version 1.51 to version 1.52. Hey, maybe there's a good alignment in there. Maybe it's going to magically align better. No, I'm just kidding. I have no idea. It's usually just some kind of firmware update for the machine, and you click on update, and then that's it. So that's how you update your machine. So you had an extra little tip in there. Don't worry about it losing anything. You'll never lose. You're never going to lose the files that are stored on this machine. It never does that. It just updates the firmware, and it does its thing. It's going to take a while. Then it'll restart it'll turn off your machine. When you restart, then you're going to have the new updated firmware. Then I'll go through my scanning, cutting, position adjustment a few more times, and hopefully it'll be perfect. I will make some projects with my little bears. Okay, which I already have. I already have some projects, but I'll make some more projects. So in the next tutorial, just so you know what's coming up, is we are going to take this bear and we're going to create what's called a stamping mask out of Mylar. We're going to cut a Mylar stamping mask so that then I can teach you how to sponge color and use some sponging techniques and some blends to color these bears really cute, and how to use them on projects as well. Of course, when I show that technique, you can follow along with whichever stamp set you may have. It doesn't matter, because I teach you skills. I teach you to fish, right? And you can use these skills I teach you with whatever stamps you have. All right, well, that's all for now. This is the Paper Chef, and happy holidays to all of my crafty friends.